Mr. President, the Fox News Channel is very happy to see you.
Good to see you.
And on behalf of the News Channel, let me wish you, Michelle, Sasha, and Malia a very happy and joyous 2009 holiday season.
That's so nice. I appreciate it. To the Fox family, let me say the same.
You have a jobs summit next month. You want a jobs bill in 2010. Will that jobs bill raise the deficit, or will you demand that it be deficit neutral?
You know, our first job was to get the economy to recover, and we're now seeing that. We've seen economic growth. We anticipate economic growth next quarter as well. I always said that job growth would lag behind economic growth. The question now is, how can we accelerate it? There may be some ways that we can accelerate it without spending money. For example, one of the keys to this Asia trip is to start promoting the notion of balanced growth, where the U.S. is an exporter again. You know, this is a region where right now we're sending about 25–26% of our exports. If we just boosted our share of exports by 1%, that might be 250,000 well-paying jobs in the United States. So export promotion would be an example of something that we could do without spending money. There may be some tax provisions that can encourage businesses to hire sooner rather than sitting on the sidelines. So we're taking a look at those. I think it is important, though, to recognize that if we keep on adding to the debt, even in the midst of this recovery, that at some point people could lose confidence in the U.S. economy in a way that could actually lead to a double-dip recession. And so one of the trickiest things that we're doing right now is to, on the one hand, make sure that the recovery is supported and not withdraw a lot of money either with tax increases or big spending cuts. And states, for example, need a lot of support to keep hiring teachers and so forth. At the same time, making sure that we're setting up a pathway long-term for deficit reduction. It's about as hard as of a play as there is, but it's what we have to do. And whatever additional jobs legislation comes out has to fit into that broader framework.
Does it raise the deficit or does it not?
Well,
you haven't made up your mind on
we
that?
haven't seen that, and that's part of the reason why I think we want to take a look at this summit.
David Obey said yesterday that erroneous estimates from the administration on the job-creating power of the stimulus bill, and I'm quoting now, are outrageous, and the administration owes itself, the Congress, and every American a commitment to work night and day to correct these ludicrous mistakes. Your reaction?
Look, I understand David Obey's frustration. I think that we made a decision very early on the biggest stimulus package in history. And every economic model that we looked at the time said that if you start economic growth, that unemployment will cap out at a certain rate. Now, there's no doubt that unemployment has been worse than any of the economic models that occurred at the time.
But his criticism isn't about the job creating.
Right.
It's just about what you have said about the job creating.
Well,
have there been mistakes, and do they need to be corrected?
Look, I think this is an inexact science. We're talking about a multi-trillion-dollar economy that went through the worst economic crisis since 1933. The first measure of success of the economic recovery is, did we pull ourselves back from the brink? We did. Have we gotten economic growth going again? We have. The question now is, can we make sure that we're accelerating job growth? That's my number one job. Nobody's been more disappointed than I have to see how high the unemployment rate has gotten, and I spend every waking hour when I'm talking to my economic team about how we're going to put people back to work. It's going to be
the estimate thing.
This is a side issue.
Do you support or oppose GM using bailout funds for its overseas operations, specifically Opel?
What I have said is that we are not going to meddle in GM's decisions. They now owe the U.S. government money. We are a shareholder, but we're not an active shareholder. We have specifically said that we're not in the business of running a car company. We wanted to make sure that you did not have the collapse of the U.S. auto industry in the midst of a very fragile economic situation, but we want to get out of that business as soon as possible. I was pleased to see that GM thinks it may be able to repay some of the U.S. government loans sooner than anticipated. That's something we'd encourage. In the meantime, we're not getting involved in day-to-day management.
Just a couple on health care. Dick Durbin said the new deadline for signing legislation is now State of the Union. Why is that delay acceptable to you, and how upset are you about it?
You know, I want this done as soon as possible, and I think the American people do. We've had a long debate, but you know, there's a reason why health care hasn't been reformed in 40, 50, 70 years. It is a big, complicated piece of business, and frankly, Congress is not accustomed lately to doing big, complicated pieces of business like this. We are pushing and prodding as hard as we can. I do think that a lot of the delay has been that the Congressional Budget Office, which scores or determines how much things cost, how much they might save, they've been overloaded, and it's taking a lot longer for us to get that. And I think it's entirely appropriate for legislators to say, we want to make sure we get final numbers on any piece of legislation before we actually vote on it.
So at the end of the year, that's gone?
Well, no, I haven't given up on it. We're going to keep on pushing as hard as we can to make that happen.
Will you sign legislation on health care that includes the Stupak language?
I think that there is a balance to be achieved that is consistent with the Hyde Amendment, what existed before we reformed health care. I believe in the basic idea that federal dollars shouldn't pay for abortions, but I also think that we shouldn't restrict women's choices. And so I think there's some negotiations going on, not just on the Democratic side, but I think among people who are of goodwill on both sides to see if we can arrive at something that meets that criteria, and I'm confident we can do that.
Yes or no, does the Stupak language strike that balance?
Not yet.
By how much will you miss the deadline to close Guantanamo by the expiration of an executive order, and how disappointed are you in that?
I'm not disappointed. I knew this was going to be hard. It's hard not only because of the politics, right? People, I think, understandably are fearful after a lot of years where they were told that Guantanamo was critical to keeping terrorists out. So I understood that that had to be processed. But it's also just technically hard because of the fact that...
Harder than you thought it would be?
No, as hard. I just think, as usual in Washington, things move slower than I anticipated. One of the things that we knew very early on, there are a set of detainees in Guantanamo that can be convicted, and they will be convicted. There are a set of detainees that can be deported and sent to other countries, and they will be. There's a set of detainees, though, that are dangerous to the United States, but unfortunately evidence against them may be tainted. Figuring out how to deal with them always was going to be difficult, and we are on a path and a process where I would anticipate that Guantanamo will be closed next year. I'm not going to set an exact date because a lot of this is also going to depend on cooperation from Congress.
You mentioned trade. Will you make a commitment to, in 2010, having Congress pass the pending South Korea free trade agreement?
We are going to be discussing this with South Korea. It's a potential good deal for U.S. exporters, but there are certain sectors of the economy that aren't dealt with.
It makes me a better leader. This is talking about criticism that you receive. It makes me a better leader because it forces me to hear opinions that I don't want to hear. Can you give me an example?
Oh, I figure I would...
Where criticism has made you a better leader?
Well, I think that, for example, when I'm thinking about Afghanistan right now, you've got strong voices on both sides in a very complex issue. There are voices who say this is a quagmire and we're wasting our resources and endangering our young men and women's lives, and we should just focus on Pakistan and Al-Qaeda that's in Pakistan. There are those who say we've got to go all in and commit and rebuild Afghanistan so it's a stable, just society. If I was just hearing one side, then I would probably not be getting the full reality of what's going on in Afghanistan, which is that, yes, we have a vital interest there. Yes, we have to make sure that we don't get mission creep, that we define our interests narrowly to make sure that we're just going after extremists and preventing them from having safe havens. Yes, we've got to have an effective Afghan government, and right now we don't have the kind of partner that we'd like. Yes, we've got to have Pakistan cooperating. Yes, we've got to have more civilian cooperation. So all those variables then go into the decision-making process. And as I said, if I was just listening to hawks or doves on either side of the debate, then I probably wouldn't be making a very good decision.
Yes or no? Are you going to read Sarah Palin's book?
I probably will not, but I wish her well. It looks like she's going to do very well without my readership.
The Israelis have announced their intentions to put more settlements in Gilo, I believe is the name of this area. How helpful or hurtful the process is that? And do you consider a rebuke of your efforts to stop those settlements?
Well, there's no doubt that I haven't been able to stop the settlements, and there's also no doubt from my perspective that it's in not only U.S. interest but actually Israeli interest to not build settlements. Look, the situation in the Middle East is very difficult, and I've said repeatedly, and I'll say again, Israel's security is a vital national interest of the United States, and we will make sure that they are secure. I think that additional settlement building does not contribute to Israel's security. I think it makes it harder for them to make peace with their neighbors. I think it embitters the Palestinians in a way that could end up being very dangerous, and it makes it hard to relaunch any kind of serious talks about how you achieve a two-state solution.
Mr. President, thank you very much for your time.
Appreciate it. Thank you.